Alright, so today we're going to start 26.5. I'm going to break this down into about 4 different lessons, just because again I don't want you guys feeling overwhelmed. We're going to try to focus on one transformation at a time and then put it all together next week. So this first video here we're going to be looking at the effect of K. So we're just going to focus on K. We're not going to change any other variables right now. And we're just going to see, what does that do to the graph. So hopefully you guys are able to try out those 3 Desmos sites and just play around with changing that value of K and seeing that graph hopefully shift up or down. Hopefully you guys were recognizing that the period wasn't changing, the amplitude wasn't changing. The only thing that really was getting affected was that midline, what it was oscillating around. Or for tangent, kind of that point of inflection when the graph started to curve and switch from increase to decrease. So I'm going to go through how to graph these by hand, even though I know it says a graphing calculator here. But that's what we're kind of focusing on, is just the basics of graphing by hand. So if we look here, right, I've got the parent function y equals sine of x. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with that parent function. Alright, and sine always starts at the midline, so it's 0, 1, 0, negative 1, 0. And then I'm going to sketch that just as our reference here. Alright, so I can see that midline. What it's oscillating around is that y equals 0. And then what I can do is I can take all those y values and actually add 3. Alright, so that plus 3 is going to make it go up 3. So that midline will be y equals 3. So I like to actually draw my little midlines on when I do these, just to have a clear visual. Okay, that's the middle. Now I'm going to be going up 1 and down 1 from that line. And then in terms of transformations, you got a couple options. You can count on the graph, take those points and count up 1, 2, 3. Take that point, count up 1, 2, 3. Or you can add 3 to all your y values, just like we've done in previous transformations. And we could sketch those. So you'll notice it's still starting at the midline because it's sine. It's going up first because there's no negative. It's oscillating around our new midline. Y equals 3. And then if I wanted to do y equals, or sine of x minus 2, right, that's going to drop down 2. That midline is going to be y equals negative 2. And so again, you can count all the points down on the graph. Okay, here's my new midline, negative 2. And then once you kind of have that starting point, you'll notice sine has a very distinct pattern. It starts at midline, then it goes up, back to midline, down, back to midline. You just have to be careful if you're using that pattern, because sometimes, depending on your scale, it's not every line. In this case, the scaling was every 2 lines. So just, again, be cautious with that. Another option would be to also take that parent function and then add or subtract your 2. So again, that would have been the way to get those same points there. But that's what I'm doing for kind of affecting k. That's going to be very similar for my other graphs. The only thing that's really going to change is obviously the parent function. Alright, so for cosine, we're going to just going to erase part of that sign so it's not in our way here, maybe. Alright, sorry guys, I don't ever use OneNote other than right now making videos, so bear with me. So for cosine, what we're going to do is we're going to again work with the parent function. Alright, we've got our quadrantal angles. Cosine starts at amplitude, so it starts up at 1, and then oscillates 1, 0, negative 1, 0, 1. And the scale is not how we normally do it, so I have to be conscious of that. So we've got, starting at our 1, then pi over 2, negative 1 at pi, 3 pi over 2, 2 pi, we're back to 1. Alright, and then we're going to connect those. And again, just recognizing that midline is still 0. That's what it's oscillating around. So when it goes up 4, it's going to shift your midline up 4. So one way to do that would be to add 4 to all your y's. So we've got, starts at amplitude, midline, negative amplitude, midline, amplitude. Again, we're oscillating around that new midline, y equals 4. And then when we look at this next one, minus 1, that's going to drop everything down 1, which is including our midline. So again, you could take your parent, you could subtract 1, or I like to draw my midline at negative 1, and then just say, alright, well this is going to be up 1, midline, down 1, midline, up 1. Just kind of follow that pattern. Cosine always starts at midline, sine always starts at 0. Or cosine, I'm sorry, always starts at amplitude, sine always starts at midline 0. And again, it's keeping the same shape, it's having the same period, it's having amplitude of 1. We're just physically taking that line, shifting it up or down. That's all k is doing. So it's going to do something very similar with tangent. So for tangent, right, we have it a little bit different. We usually start by drawing your asymptotes. So the period is not changed, it's pi. So your asymptotes are not changed. They're at pi over 2, negative pi over 2. And then your y values from left to right are negative 1, 0, 1. So when we go to add, this k value here, right, that plus 3 is going to shift the graph up 3. It's not going to do anything to the asymptotes. Those are going to stay, but I'm going to take those y values and shift them up 3. So we get 2, 3, 4. So it might have looked like it was kind of compressing or shrinking. It was actually physically just going up 3 in that decimal step. Same thing with the minus 2, it's going to go down 2. So you're going to take your y values and subtract 2. And again, those asymptotes aren't changing. What would change the asymptotes is kind of that coefficient of x affecting the period. So that's the idea. So this is our little summary. Right, the midline is the only feature that changes. Amplitude, period stay the same. And adding or subtracting that constant just shifts it up or down. So that midline would also get vertically translated k units up or down. So what I want you guys to try for homework tonight are the draw problems on the next 3 slides. And again, it's just a way for me to quick check in, how are you doing with this? Is it making sense? And then make sure you hit submit, the blue button on the bottom right corner, so I can actually see your work. And then I'll post the answers as well so you guys can check in and see, how you're doing. And then the next video I'll make will be for question 3, kind of shifting horizontally.